Welcome to the Train Your Brain podcast. We are your hosts, Ed and Britney Holmes, and we've got some good stuff for you.
Yeah, we run a company called Axios, and we're on a mission to do two things. Help you realize that you can create and live a fulfilling and high-demand life that doesn't stress you out and doesn't lead to burnout. And second, that if you learn how to relate to the everyday stressors of life better, and tackle the stories you have about yourself in the world that are actually the biggest causes of stress, stress will become your greatest gift in creating a life that you really love.
Yeah, so you can expect on this podcast to hear tools and battle-tested tricks and tips that we have used in our own life and the clients that we coach, and we're excited to bring those to you here in this space.
Let's get into it.
All right, we are in a new location. We've never been on video before.
We have never been on video.
We haven't. This is a new day, a new world for us.
And we are a stress management and performance podcast. And the last hour has been very stressful as we're figuring out how the heck
I also
to
love
make
your
all this work.
microphone is so far away from you, which is really fun.
I have a booming voice.
That is true. Your voice is more booming.
And I'm a fidgeter. So I was concerned that I would, so I'm going to keep my hands. Yeah. I don't know what to do with my hands.
We appreciate all of you who have been listening to our podcast from the beginning, and those of you who are just joining with us now. We're excited to get into today's topic. And Train Your Brain is all things mental and emotional and relational and all the things to train your brain.
That is such a wide category. Hey, everything you can think of, we're going to talk about it. Ultimately, our coaching lives at this intersection of your emotional, mental, physical, and what we call spiritual health.
Yes.
Right? So at the center of those four things, your health and being regulated in those four things is the life that you want and the performance you desire. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's working with athletes to executives to what we call the everyday person, right? Like, we believe every single person on earth deserves to live a healthy life that they find deep fulfillment in.
Right.
And we have all these different ways that we get people aware of and exposed to that type of content and that type of coaching.
Because what good is it of learning to manage your stress better and perform better at work if you hate your life?
Yep.
There's no point. So we're in the business of helping equip you to make sure that that isn't your reality. Yep. So let's jump into today. What are we talking about today? It's a biggie.
Well, it is the fundamental thing that really is the crux of everything we teach. Mm-hmm. It's because we don't understand how our brain works.
Yeah.
We are completely shocked by how we respond to growth.
Yeah.
Right? And so we can sum it up in a single statement. Your brain does not care. It actually doesn't want you to grow.
It hates growth.
Yeah, it does not.
Not just doesn't care about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't want us to grow.
Yeah.
Because growth, it's not comfortable.
Well, yeah, there's the psychological side of this that I think is really important to lay out. So let's get into the steps of it.
Yeah.
So our brain does not prioritize our growth. Our brain prioritizes safety. Mm-hmm. Like, our brain's dominant commitment is our flesh suit's safety and reproduction.
I really like that phrase.
Flesh suit. I have to slow it down to say
that
it right.
5 times fast.
I'm not going to try. Our body and mind prioritizes our flesh suit's survival, safety, and reproduction, right?
Yes.
So it creates this dynamic baseline of safety and perceived control. Mm-hmm. And I say perceived control because our brain convinces us that predictability is control.
Yeah. It doesn't know the difference.
No.
It just wants to feel like it's in control.
Yeah, ultimately, like, to use a narrative analogy, it can, because our brain can determine with a high likelihood what the outcome of the story is, then it feels like it's in control.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially because most of us, day in and day out, there's a lot of routine, right? And so our brain thrives on routine because, again, it's predictability. And then it makes it feel like we're in control.
Yeah. So we will actually stay in, this is a whole nother podcast topic, but to seed it, we will actually stay in rhythms and patterns of dysfunction because at least we know what our part is and we know what the outcome most likely is.
No, it's so true. We can stay in, we see this all the time, and this used to be us, right? We can stay in a job that we hate because at least it's a known, predictable environment.
Yeah, exactly. So we create, the fancy psychological term for this is homeostasis. Mm-hmm. So our brain creates a homeostasis, like I said, this dynamic baseline of perceived control and safety. Mm-hmm. We can also call it our comfort zone.
Yes.
This like really cozy, comfy spot where I know who I am, I know how my world is going to be. It's people like me. I do things like this, right? All the growth we want, though, exists outside of that comfort zone. Right? So, foundationally, our brain does not want us to grow. It creates this thing called our comfort zone that the goal for our brain is that we would live within that comfort zone.
Yeah.
So then when we set a goal, and it's any change. I think that's an important thing to realize. There's fancy...
Even good change.
Yeah, even good change. So like a workout or a book that stretches your understanding of yourself or the world, or showing up well in a relationship, or advocating for yourself at your job, or asking for more responsibility.
Getting vulnerable with someone you care about, right?
Yeah.
That is uncomfortable.
Anything outside of what you normally do, our brain is going to go, that's a threat.
Yeah. I need to, if you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, which if you haven't, you're missing out. Phenomenal movie that describes some
Number 2 is coming out soon.
I know. I'm excited. We're going to go see that.
Yeah.
But there is such a cool depiction that they make of the emotions in our head. And there's one called disgust. No, or fear.
Fear and disgust, actually. Both.
Yeah, they both kind of simultaneously react as the character in the movie, I won't give any spoilers, is doing things that are really uncomfortable to her. And that is exactly what happens in our brains as well.
Yeah, because it's interesting, we forget that we have evolved as a species, right? So like when we were wandering the plains, hunting buffalo, or whatever the heck our people were doing.
Do you think we would have hunted buffalo?
Would
we have been buffalo hunters?
I don't know. The thing is, there's probably a bear, a lion, a tiger, oh my, hiding in the bushes, right? So we actually have a negative bias towards threats.
Right.
So we have a tendency as a species to say, that is potentially dangerous.
Yeah. Threats, by the way, both physical and psychological threats.
Yeah, because if you did something that ostracized you from the tribe and you got kicked out of the tribe, what happened? You died.
Yeah.
Right?
You did.
And our brain's commitment is our survival and reproduction.
Yes.
So it will use whatever means necessary, especially pain, to get us back in our comfort zone. So pain, the gap between the goal that I've set for myself, the thing I'm stepping into, what I believe I'm capable of doing, and where I'm at currently, that gap is filled with pain every time. And this is why this is important. We think that pain will go away.
Yeah.
And it won't. Now, it may dissipate as you stay consistent in quite literally a type of exposure therapy with something that scares you. Right? So like when we started CrossFit, it was so intimidating.
Yeah. Guys, for those of you who haven't heard this story before, when we started CrossFit, I was so terrified. We would have to show up 10 minutes early before class because I would sit in the parking lot and Ed would have to like pump me up. Because I was sobbing, so afraid I was going to look like an idiot, injure myself. Like I was so fearful of that experience. it was such a big step out of my comfort zone. And now it's a normal thing that we do. Like, sure, there's some workouts that still give me anxiety and are uncomfortable, 100%. And I'm not terrified sitting in the parking lot because it's a muscle that I built through continuing to expose myself to that area of discomfort.
Or like a big one we're learning right now is learning how to sell what we do.
Yeah.
Right? And build those types of relationships. We joke that they didn't cover sales in Bible college, right? Which is what both of our background is in. And so as I expose myself to something, my fear anticipation starts to dissipate because I feel more comfortable in my exposure to it.
Right. Because I've seen myself do the thing that my brain told me was a threat to my safety.
Yeah. And then I set a new goal and it starts all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when we first started working with our coach, Ronnie, and I genuinely thought, I would have never vocalized this to Ronnie because I wouldn't have wanted to know what his response would have been. But I genuinely thought we would get to a point where we'd arrived, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we did the thing, we grew and we reached this point and now we're here. We can just hang out and enjoy things. But that is not what having a commitment to growth looks like. It's not what building and creating the life that we dream of and imagine, right? It doesn't mean arriving at this place and then just living there till the end of time. Although that's what my brain would love for me to do.
Which is a way, in essence, it says, like, we have found this with ourselves. So when I lost the most significant amount of my weight, I lost 130 pounds in about a 2.5 year span, right?
Significant.
Yeah, significant. Huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And my brain was like, hey, kudos to you. Golf clap.
Yay!
Yay! And it, in essence, just moved my comfort zone.
Right.
And I reestablished a new one. Mm-hmm. So for all intents and purposes, I 110% punched out of my old comfort zone.
Yep. And
I set up shop in a new one.
Yeah.
So I recently dropped from about 21% body fat to 15% body fat. Mm-hmm. And
which has been
really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It has been really hard. It's been really uncomfortable because I'm outside my comfort zone again.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the things our brain tells us is this arrival fallacy, right? Where when you arrive, when you have the money in the bank, the relationship, when you get promoted, when you hit the sales quota, when you when the scale says this,
right? Whatever metric,
my brain is telling me, when you do that, then it's cool. You've done it. You can settle back in. And that is a way our brain convinces us to set up a new comfort zone.
Yeah, 100%.
Like when I realize that my brain is constantly attempting to get me to stop growing, then my behavior starts making a whole lot more sense.
Yeah. This is a phenomenon we see a lot. I see this a lot with the women that I coach in their nutrition because, and this was part of my story too, it's so easy, especially the way that our culture just promotes health and wellness. We get fixated on that single metric like we were talking about. Usually it's a number on the scale, right? And this is true for me. Our brain will actually disregard the other areas, the other metrics of success that I've actually been growing in. So like right now, my nutrition coach has me in another deficit because I kind of leveled off in my weight loss. And I was like, listen, I'm ready to do more. And so she's like, okay, great. This is what we're going to do now. Here's your new macros. And it's uncomfortable. And she told me that I'm not allowed to get on the scale at all during these 5 weeks. And I'm thankful she did that because it's forced me to really pay attention to the other metrics of my body changing. I felt my fitness level increase. My clothes are fitting better, right? Like there's so many other metrics that show us that we're moving forward. And because our brain is programmed for growth and survival and comfort.
Not for growth.
Yeah, sorry. It's programmed for survival and comfort. It doesn't want me to see the areas that I'm actually changing and moving forward in. It wants to convince me that this isn't working and see this number isn't changing, so none of this matters. That's what we've talked about this before, but perfection says if it doesn't look like X, by Y, like if it doesn't look like this number on the scale by this date, then none of my effort matters, right? Consistency says, this is a whole nother podcast in and of itself. Consistency says, I do things like movement, like healthy nutrition daily because I value it, right? That is a growth mindset.
Yeah. When I realize that my brain is going to use pain emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, like attacking a why, a purpose, right?
Your identity.
My identity. When I understand that my brain is going to use pain in an attempt to get me back in my comfort zone, then I can begin to really understand the idea that pain is the path.
Yeah.
That's something that the Stoics have taught. That's like a leadership, personal development 101 thing. There is a high likelihood when I am extremely uncomfortable that I'm headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right?
It's actually the sign that you're on the right path.
Yeah. So then now we're into what's next. This is what we talk about next week. Is stress fundamentally then is my story. Like the thing that brings about the discomfort in my life is not the event.
Right.
It's what I'm telling myself about the event. And then because of the story I tell myself, the behaviors I choose to participate in to deal with the story start making a whole lot more sense too.
Yeah.
We will hammer this probably every single podcast.
100%.
Stress will either break me down or be the number one catalyst for my growth.
Yeah.
And we're on this mission to get people to realize that stress is actually your biggest tool for growth when you can change your story. But we can't change our story unless we understand our brain is working correctly.
Correct.
Right? Like we are committed to living a life, this mastermind I'm a part of has titled Growth Constant Expansion. So we are committed to living at the limits or just outside of our comfort zone, committed to constant expansion, which means I will spend the majority of my life inherently uncomfortable.
Man, that sounds exciting.
Well, it is. Here's the thing.
We're really pumping people up today.
Well, like, I find hope in that because I'm finally seeing my life change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, my commitment to living life, our commitment, we have coaches, we're part of this mastermind, we have accountability groups. We have surrounded ourselves with the conditions necessary to push ourselves out of our comfort zone.
Right.
Surprise, surprise. I really, over the last 2 to 3 months, have been working through, at a deeper level, still being emotionally attached to food. Specifically food as a reward.
Yeah.
Right? And realizing that, like, I start dealing with this story I had about food and its role in my life, and my body's transforming.
Right.
There is no getting the result I want without embracing the discomfort.
Right. Not a sustained result.
No.
Because I think that's what's interesting. We can get spurts of results, but every single time, if we're not addressing that story that our brain's been perpetuating, we will end up reverting. Because again, my brain's going to do whatever it can to get me back to that comfort zone, right?
Yeah. So, recap. Brain does not want you to grow. Your brain's commitment is your safety and survival reproduction.
Yep.
All growth inherently will be uncomfortable because it exists outside of our comfort zone, this cozy nestled spot of perceived control and safety.
Yep.
And when I begin to understand my brain is working correctly as it brings discomfort, as I start to grow, then I can realize that stress doesn't have to break me down. It's actually an indicator I'm headed in the right direction. And as I start improving my story and my tools around stress, it becomes my biggest catalyst for growth.
100%. And then next week, we're getting into some more good stuff.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure, if you haven't done so already, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for being here. You can subscribe and like this video. Share this with someone you know that this would be helpful for. Maybe it's a coworker, a friend, family member. We are doing these to provide tools and equip you to live the life that you dream of. And so we would love for you to subscribe and follow along with us. Leave us a review. Those are just super helpful as we continue to grow the podcast. So thanks for being with us here today, and we will see you again next week.